I'm Jay Goodman from Talking with a Goodman, and this is the Screwtape Letters Lenten series, letter 21. We're only 10 letters from being done and getting prepared to celebrate Easter as a church. How's your Lenten cleanse been going? I've personally experienced many different undulations in my cleanse, the ups and downs and lots that the evil one has thrown at me. And in some ways, I think I could have done better by now. In other ways, I think with God only, I've come to this point stronger. But I can tell you it wasn't me. It's only been the grace and the mercy and the strength of God that got me to even to this point. I mean, I'm a little behind, but that's okay. We still get to finish on April 14th. It is hard being a good man. It really is. Talking with a Good Man is a show aimed at calling all men to be a good man. Being a good man is very difficult. Daily I work, sometimes fail, to keep pride out of my life. We have to remember we are amazing. God made us for greatness amidst our failures. When we do fail, we see how Screwtape led us to that low point. Temptations galore, the blind leading the blind. And then when we have that low moment in our life of undulations as a Christian, isn't Satan right there to yell those accusations in our faces? He's the accuser. Jesus is the lover of our souls. When we mess up, when we have those lows in our undulations in life, as C.S. Lewis mentions in the letters, we must remember to not allow shame in and to continue living the life and repenting and getting back up and moving forward. If I had done this show on my own, with my own strength, I can tell you it wouldn't have made it past the first one. So join me in striving to be a good man for your family, your church, yourself, and God. So let's start the show. The theme today, before we read letter 21, is a clouded intellect. And the theme verse I chose is all the way back in Job. Remember, Job lost everything. Can you imagine in just a short period of time being told one event by one event that you lost your animals, all your land, your family, and then you were personally afflicted with probably the most painful sores all over your body, and even your own wife tells you to curse God and die. What a low, low place for such a seemingly great man. And what does he do? He falls to the ground and weeps that famous verse we all know, but hope we don't ever have to utter in those circumstances. The Lord gives and the Lord takes. Blessed be the name of the Lord. We are going to all experience loss, and there's no way to prepare for it, because it sometimes comes suddenly. And there are so many verses in the Bible that call us to live a repentant life, to take up our cross daily and walk closely with Jesus, to stay on that narrow path that leads to heaven. But these verses are what stuck out to me. So, God literally pointed these out to me, and they are from Job 22, 22 to 30, which says, "Receive instruction from his mouth, and lay up his words in your heart. If you return to the Almighty and humble yourself, if you remove unrighteousness far from your tents, if you lay gold in the dust, and gold of Ophir among the stones of the torrent bed, and if the Almighty is your gold and your precious silver, then you will delight yourself in the Almighty and lift up your face to God. You will make your prayer to him, and he will hear you, and you will pay your vows. You will decide on a matter, and it will be established for you, and light will shine on your ways. For God abases the proud, but he saves the lowly. He delivers the innocent man. You will be delivered through the cleanness of your hands." These verses in Job is a response to Job from his friend Eliphaz, who spoke with great wisdom as a representative of the wisdom of the Edomites, which were a people famous in antiquity. He was really at a point where he has heard Job in previous chapters cursing the day he was born. Now he's trying to encourage him to return to the Lord. By sticking close to God and keeping pride out of our lives, it will also keep a clouded intellect from forming in our heads. So with that, let's go ahead and read letter 21. My dear Wormwood, yes, a period of sexual temptation is an excellent time for working in a subordinate attack on the patient's peevishness. It may even be the main attack, as long as he thinks it the subordinate one. But here, as in everything else, the way must be prepared for your moral assault by darkening his intellect. Men are not angered by mere misfortune, but by misfortune conceived as injury. And the sense of injury depends on the feeling that a legitimate claim has been denied. The more claims on life, therefore, that your patient can be induced to make, the more often he will feel injured, and as a result ill-tempered. Now you will have noticed that nothing throws him into a passion so easily as to find a tract of time which he reckoned on having at his own disposal unexpectedly taken from him. It is the unexpected visitor, when he looked forward to a quiet evening, or the friend's talkative wife turning up when he looked forward to a tete-a-tete with the friend, that throw him out of gear. Now he is not yet so uncharitable or slothful that these small demands on his courtesy are in themselves too much for it. They anger him because he regards his time as his own, and feels that it is being stolen. You must therefore zealously guard in his mind the curious assumption, my time is my own. Let him have the feeling that he starts each day as the lawful possessor of 24 hours. Let him feel as a grievous tax that portion of this property which he has to make over to his employers, and as a generous donation that further portion which he allows to religious duties. But what he must never be permitted to doubt is that the total from which these deductions has been made was, in some mysterious sense, his own personal birthright. You have here a delicate task. The assumption which you want him to go on making is so absurd that if once it is questioned, even we cannot find a shred of argument in its defense. The man can neither make nor retain one moment of time. It all comes to him by pure gift. He might as well regard the sun and moon as his chattels. He is also, in theory, committed to a total service of the enemy, and if the enemy appeared to him in bodily form, and demanded that total service for even one day, he would not refuse. He would be greatly relieved if that one day involved nothing harder than listening to the conversation of a foolish woman, and he would be relieved almost to the pitch of disappointment if for 1/2 hour in that day the enemy said, now you may go and amuse yourself. Now if he thinks about his assumption for a moment, even he is bound to realize that he is actually in this situation every day. When I speak of preserving this assumption in his mind, therefore, the last thing I mean you to do is to furnish him with arguments in its defense. There aren't any. Your task is purely negative. Don't let his thoughts come anywhere near it. Wrap a darkness about it, and in the center of that darkness, let his sense of ownership in time lie silent, uninspected, and operative. The sense of ownership in general is always to be encouraged. The humans are always putting up claims to ownership which sound equally funny in heaven and in hell, and we must keep them doing so. Much of the modern resistance to chastity comes from men's belief that they own their bodies, those vast and perilous estates, pulsating with the energy that made the worlds, in which they find themselves without their consent, and from which they are ejected at the pleasure of another. It is as if a royal child whom his father has placed for love's sake in titular command of some great province under the real rule of wise counselors should come to fancy he really owns the cities, the forests, and the corn, in the same way as he owns the bricks on the nursery floor. We produce this sense of ownership not only by pride but by confusion. We teach them not to notice the different senses of the possessive pronoun, the finely graded differences that run from my boots through my dog, my servant, my wife, my father, my master, and my country to my God. They can be taught to reduce all these senses to that of my boots, the my of ownership. Even in the nursery, a child can be taught to mean by my teddy bear, not the old imagined recipient of affection to whom it stands in a special relation, for that is what the enemy will teach them to mean if we are not careful. But the bear I can pull to pieces if I like. And at the other end of the scale, we have taught men to say, my God, in a sense not really very different from my boots, meaning the God on whom I have a claim for my distinguished services and whom I exploit from the pulpit, the God I have done a corner in. And all the time the joke is that the word mine, in its fully possessive sense, cannot be uttered by a human being about anything. In the long run, either our Father or the enemy will say mine of each thing that exists, and especially of each man. They will find out in the end, never fear, to whom their time, their souls, and their bodies really belong, certainly not to them, whatever happens. At present, the enemy says mine of everything on the pedantic, legalistic ground that he made it. Our Father hopes in the end to say mine of all things on the more realistic and dynamic ground of conquest. Your affectionate uncle, Screwtape. So here Screwtape is telling Wormwood to cloud the patient's intellect and then make the patient's world egocentric, meaning self-centered. The whole world revolves around me kind of attitude. Another theme, maybe the central theme of this letter, is to convince man that he is the supreme master of his body, and thus can do what he pleases with it without interruption. But is that the case? Can we really do what we want with our bodies? We can, and people do, but we have to answer for our choices we make. And God calls us to take care of our temple, and like I've said in past letters, to bruise and buffet, for example, our bodies daily, making us its master. It sounds contradictory, but it really isn't. We are to master our bodies so that we can serve God with that master to further the kingdom of God. Screwtape, Satan, wants to distort it and convince us that we are the supreme master of our bodies, and we can do what we want. That's not life-giving and self-sacrificial. The man can, in theory, think he is the reason for his own existence. The reality is that mankind reflects the love of only one creator. God is the author of life. He gave man his identity, which reflects his own. The devil knows this, hence the constant attempt to cloud man's intellect from seeing reality. And if the devil can cloud our intellect enough, then he wins, he gets us, and it's either God or Satan, and we must choose daily to take up our cross and follow Christ, or not do that and end up following Satan straight to hell. It's a choice, and God will not send us to hell. He never does. We send ourselves to hell, and he just carries out the sentence ultimately. So to apply this, we have to ask ourselves the question, can man live by bread alone? And this is from chapter 4, verse 4. God creates man out of his own free will, and he desires us to share in his love. God gives human beings 4 things out of his own free will. He gives, number 1, the power to freely share in his providence, trusting us with the responsibility of subduing the earth and having dominion over it. The second thing he gives us is he enables us to be intelligent and free in order to complete the work of creation. The third thing he gives us is he allows perfection of harmony for our own good and that of our neighbor. And the last one is, the fourth thing, is he allows us to enter deliberately into the divine plan by our actions, our prayers, our faith, and our suffering. So I'll end this with an awesome reference from Marlin's study guide where he talks of Catechism 295. 295 says, "We believe that God created the world according to his wisdom. It is not the product of any necessity whatever, nor of blind fate or chance. We believe that it proceeds from God's free will. He wanted to make his creatures share in his being, wisdom, and goodness. For you created all things, and by your will they existed and were created. Therefore the psalmist exclaims, O Lord, how manifest are your works! In wisdom you have made them all, and the Lord is good to all, and his compassion is over all that he has made." So, thank you for tuning in again. I hope you're enjoying this show, and I hope you have an excellent day. Because of me being a little bit behind, I'll be uploading a video tomorrow, or later today actually, with Jim Beckman that should have been loaded Friday, but a constant struggle with storage space and time has forced me to do it later. So be on the lookout for that. The next week will be the second to last week of Lent, of this Lenten series. I'll be starting off Monday and Tuesday, and then Wednesday there will be a very cool guest speaker. I have to warn you ahead of time, it's going to be unfortunately audio because he was driving at the time and couldn't get out of that. He's literally that busy, and I can completely relate. So be on the lookout for that. Also, keep the comments coming, please. If I get 100 comments or more, I'll do that raffle, and I'll choose one person to get a free Long Ride Home hat from Bear Wozniak, a C.S. Lewis Signature Classics book, like what I have, and a copy of Marlon De La Torre's study guide when I do the drawing on April 14th, if I have 100 comments. If you'd like to get a hold of me, my email, as always, is jaygoodman.deepadventure@gmail.com. And if you feel in your heart to donate to the show and to my future projects I'm working on after Lent is over, my Venmo is at JAYGoodman75. Thank you for your support you've given me so far in watching this. I would be very, very grateful if you would please like each of these videos, comment, follow, subscribe. It helps these shows, get higher in the algorithms of YouTube and Google so more people see them. I pray your day is awesome and that you have a blessed weekend, and I'll see you Monday. I'm out.